Tonight, we are going to talk about one of the loneliest places in the universe. Not inside a black hole, not on a dead planet, and not at the edge of the solar system, but in the vast, empty darkness between galaxies. From Earth, the universe looks full. We see stars, nebulae, planets, and galaxies scattered across the night sky. But this is only because we are inside a galaxy. We are surrounded by light. We live in a place where stars are close enough to make the universe feel alive. But if you could leave the Milky Way behind and drift into the space between galaxies, everything would begin to disappear. The stars would fade. The galaxy behind you would shrink into a pale glow. And ahead of you, there would be almost nothing. No planets, no nearby suns, no familiar constellations, no direction that feels like home. Just a silent ocean of darkness stretching for millions of light years. And the terrifying part is that this empty space is not rare. It is most of the universe. So tonight, the question is simple. What would it really be like to enter the void between galaxies? Before we begin tonight's journey, subscribe to the channel if you want more calm space documentaries like this. Leave a like if you enjoy deep space mysteries, and write in the comments where you are watching from, and what time it is where you are right now. Tonight, you are watching the Just About Space channel, talking about the terrifying reality of the void between galaxies. The first thing to understand is that the universe only looks full because of where we are standing. From Earth, the night sky can feel crowded. On a clear night, far from city lights, thousands of stars appear above us. Some are bright and sharp, some are faint, almost hidden. The Milky Way can stretch across the sky like a pale river of light, and through telescopes, the darkness becomes even richer. Nebulae appear, star clusters appear, galaxies appear. The deeper we look, the more the universe seems to fill itself with light. It can almost feel as if space is packed with things, stars in every direction, galaxies behind galaxies, clouds of gas, distant suns, ancient light. But that feeling is partly an illusion, not because the stars are fake, and not because the galaxies are not there. They are real. The light is real. The beauty is real. But the fullness we see from Earth comes from living inside one of the bright places in the universe. We are not looking at space from a neutral position. We are looking from inside a galaxy. That changes everything. The Milky Way is our island of light. It contains hundreds of billions of stars, huge clouds of gas and dust, planets, black holes, star clusters, and the long glowing structure we see across the night sky. We are buried inside that structure. We are not outside looking at it from a distance. We are inside it, surrounded by its stars, living near one ordinary star among many others. This is why the universe feels lit from our point of view. We are inside the light. When we look up at night, most of the stars we see with our eyes are not spread evenly through the whole universe. They are our neighbors inside the Milky Way. They are part of the same galactic city. Some are close by cosmic standards, others are farther, but still inside the same great disk of stars. The sky looks alive because we live inside a place where stars are common. But that is not what most of the universe is like. A galaxy is not the normal texture of space everywhere. A galaxy is a concentration, a gathering, a bright island held together by gravity. Between these islands, the universe opens into something far emptier. The distances grow, the stars thin out, the familiar glow disappears. The places where galaxies live are spectacular, but they are separated by spaces so vast that the mind struggles to hold them. From Earth, we usually forget this, because every image of space shows us the bright parts. We see spiral galaxies glowing in blue and gold. We see nebulae shining in red and purple. We see starfields packed with points of light. We see planets lit by their suns, moons hanging over alien horizons, and beautiful clouds of dust where new stars are born. Space, in our imagination, becomes a place full of objects. But the universe is not mostly objects. It is mostly distance. The bright things are the islands. The dark between them is the ocean. And we live on one tiny shore of one island, looking up through the lights around us. This matters because it changes the meaning of darkness. When we stand on Earth and look at the night sky, the darkness between the stars may seem like background. It feels like the empty space behind the interesting things. The stars are what catch the eye. The blackness feels secondary, almost like a canvas. But in reality, the blackness is not secondary. It is the dominant part. The light is the exception. That is difficult to feel because humans evolved on a planet near a star inside a galaxy. Our sense of normal comes from living in a rare environment. We have sunlight during the day, moonlight sometimes at night, a sky full of stars when the air is clear. We live in a solar system where planets orbit nearby, where the sun gives energy, where gravity gives structure, where light and matter are always close enough to shape experience. So when we imagine the universe, we imagine it from a place of cosmic privilege. We imagine space with a sun nearby. We imagine destinations. We imagine that if we travel far enough, we will eventually find another world, another star, another glowing place. And sometimes that is true. Inside a galaxy, there are many stars. The distance between stars is enormous by human standards. But compared with the distance between galaxies, it is still a crowded neighborhood. The nearest star system to the Sun is only a few light years away. That is already almost impossible for current human technology. But cosmically, it is close. Other stars surround us in every direction because we are inside the Milky Way's stellar population. But if you leave the galaxy, the meaning of nearby changes. Suddenly, the next obvious destination is not a neighboring star. It is another galaxy, and that galaxy may be millions of light years away. This is where the true scale of the void begins to appear. The universe is often described through its objects: stars, planets, galaxies, black holes. But if you could zoom out far enough, you would see that galaxies are not touching each other like grains of sand packed tightly in a jar. They are separated by enormous gulfs. Even when galaxies belong to groups and clusters, the distances between them are immense. The space between their stars and the space between the galaxies themselves is so large that most of the universe is not glowing matter. It is the silence between glowing matter. This is why the idea of intergalactic space is so unsettling. It is not just space. It is space after the familiar structure has been removed. No nearby star to define day. No solar system to give direction. No planetary orbit. No close nebula. No local sky full of familiar points. Only the faint lights of galaxies so far away that they look less like places and more like memories. And the terrifying part is that this is not some strange edge case. This is not a rare pocket, hidden somewhere unusual. The space between galaxies is a major part of the universe. The shining galaxies we love to photograph are not the whole story. They are the visible islands in a far greater darkness. From Earth, the Milky Way protects us from feeling this truth directly, not physically, in the sense of a wall, but psychologically. Because wherever we look, we see evidence that we belong to a structure. We see stars that share our galaxy. We see the band of the Milky Way itself. We see a sky shaped by our location, inside a dense, stellar environment. Even the darkness between stars is still darkness inside a galaxy. There are still systems nearby by cosmic standards. There is still a sense that light surrounds us, even if it is far away. But imagine slowly removing that. Imagine the sky becoming less dense. Imagine the familiar star fields thinning. Imagine the Milky Way no longer stretching across your sky, but shrinking into a single glowing mass behind you. That is when you begin to understand that the night sky on Earth is not the universe as it normally is. It is the view from inside a bright place, a protected place, a crowded place, a place where gravity gathered matter into stars, and stars gathered planets. And one planet eventually produced eyes that could look up and mistake the local glow for the normal condition of the cosmos. The universe is far darker than our sky makes it feel. Even the famous images from telescopes can hide this. A deep field image may show thousands of galaxies in a patch of sky that looks empty to the human eye. At first, that seems to prove the universe is unbelievably full. And, in one sense, it does. It shows that the visible universe contains an extraordinary number of galaxies, each one filled with stars. But it can also mislead us emotionally, because those galaxies are separated by distances that the image does not make us feel. In a photograph, they sit close together on a flat screen. In reality, they are spread across unimaginable depth. The image compresses distance. The void does not. This is one reason space documentaries can make the universe feel more crowded than it is. We jump from planet to planet, star to star, galaxy to galaxy, because storytelling needs movement. But real space is not a sequence of close objects. It is long emptiness, interrupted by brief regions of matter. If you are actually traveling, most of the journey would not be spectacular flybys or dramatic views. It would be waiting. Darkness, measurement, silence, more distance than scenery. And between galaxies, that becomes extreme. The human brain wants landmarks. It wants a horizon, a road, a mountain, a sun, a destination. It wants something nearby to compare distance against. But intergalactic space removes almost all of that. If you were placed far enough outside a galaxy, your eyes would not see a rich starry sky. They would see darkness with a few distant smudges. The scale would become so large that the usual meaning of travel would begin to break. You would not feel like you were crossing space. You would feel like space had swallowed every place. That is the first terrifying reality of the void between galaxies. Not that it is full of danger, but that it is not full of anything familiar. The universe is capable of making places like Earth, places with warmth, air, oceans, mountains, life, and memory. It is capable of making galaxies with billions of suns, nebulae bright enough to glow across light years, and star clusters that shine like cosmic cities. But those places exist inside a much larger structure of absence. The ordinary universe on the largest scale is not a starry sky above a living world. It is darkness with islands. And we live inside one of those islands. That is why leaving the Milky Way would be more than a change in location. It would be a change in psychological reality. As long as you are inside the galaxy, even deep space still has context. The stars around you are distant, but they belong to the same home structure. They form a background. They tell you, in a silent way, that you are still inside something. But once the galaxy begins to fall behind, that context starts to disappear. The Milky Way stops being the world around you. It becomes an object behind you. And ahead of you, the universe no longer looks full. It begins to look honest. This is where the journey truly starts. Not at Earth, not at the edge of the solar system, not even among the outer stars of the Milky Way. The real change begins when the galaxy that once surrounded you becomes a distant glow, and you realize that the lights you thought filled the universe were mostly the lights of home. To understand the void between galaxies, we have to leave that home behind. We have to move outward from the sun, past the planets, beyond the thin edges of the solar system, through the wider structure of the Milky Way, and toward the region where the stars no longer feel like a sky. Because only then does the universe begin to reveal the scale of its darkness, not as a background, not as an empty detail, but as the place most of reality seems to live. To reach that darkness, you would first have to leave the light that raised you. You would have to leave the sun, the planets, the familiar architecture of the solar system, and then the wider glow of the Milky Way itself. At first, the journey would not feel like entering a void. It would feel like traveling through layers of home. The first layer would be the solar system. Earth would fall behind. The moon would shrink. Mars would become another reddish point. Jupiter and Saturn, enormous from close range, would slowly lose their power over the eye. The sun would remain bright for a long time, because even far from Earth, it is still the center of the local world. As long as the sun is still a visible anchor, space does not feel completely empty. Even beyond Neptune, even past the known planets, you are still inside a system with a center. There is still a back toward the sun and a farther away from the sun. There is still a story you can understand. But if you keep going, the sun becomes smaller. Not gone, not useless, but smaller. It stops feeling like the entire sky and becomes one star among many. That would be the first psychological shift. For all of human history, the sun has been the most important light in the sky. It defines day. It warms the planet. It powers weather, oceans, plants, and life. But from far enough away, it becomes almost ordinary. A bright point, a memory of warmth, a star you can point to but no longer feel. And still, you would not be in the true void, because the galaxy would still surround you. The stars in the sky would still belong mostly to the Milky Way. They would still form patterns, even if those patterns slowly changed as you moved. The galaxy would still be your environment. You would be leaving the solar system, but not yet leaving the great island of stars that contains it. This is where the scale begins to become difficult. Leaving the solar system is already almost impossible by human standards. The distances are enormous. A spacecraft can spend decades moving outward and still remain only at the edge of the sun's neighborhood. But compared with the size of the Milky Way, the solar system is almost nothing. To leave the galaxy, you would need to cross a scale far beyond planetary thinking. And we are deep inside it. Not at the center, not at the edge, somewhere in the disk, orbiting far from the crowded core, inside one of the galaxy's quieter regions. From our position, the Milky Way does not look like a full spiral because we are not outside it. But if you could leave it, the galaxy would slowly reveal its true shape. From the outside, the Milky Way would no longer be the white river we see from Earth. It would become a vast spiral structure, with arms of stars curling through darkness and dust lanes cutting through its glow. The place that once felt infinite would become visible as one object among many. That change alone would be unsettling, because it would prove that even our greatest home structure has an outside. At first, nothing would feel dramatic. Space is too large for drama to happen quickly. The stars would not suddenly switch off. The Milky Way would not instantly become a spiral behind you. You would pass through distance so slowly that generations could live and die while the view changed only slightly. This is important. Leaving a galaxy is not like crossing a border. There is no wall, no edge you pass through, no moment where the Milky Way ends and the void begins. This makes the departure feel stranger. Human beings like boundaries, coastlines, doors, borders, horizons. But a galaxy fades by density. The stars thin until the idea of being inside becomes less useful. The ship would not cross a line. It would slowly realize that the line was never there. Instead, the galaxy thins. The stars become fewer. The bright structures become less overwhelming. The sense of being inside a luminous environment fades little by little. This might be one of the strangest views imaginable. For the first time, home would become visible as an object. From Earth, the Milky Way is the place around us. From outside, It would be something you could look back at. A glowing structure, a vast spiral island, a pale disk of stars, dust lanes and luminous arms turning slowly in the darkness. And somewhere inside that glow would be everything familiar. The sun, Earth, the moon, every ocean, every city, every human story, everything that ever looked up at the night sky and wondered what was beyond it would be hidden inside one small region of that distant light. That view would change the meaning of home. From Earth, home is detailed. Streets, rooms, coastlines, weather, faces, voices. From outside the galaxy, home becomes compressed into glow. Not because it matters less, but because distance has removed the details. The universe does not preserve emotional scale. It only preserves geometry. That thought would be almost impossible to hold, because the farther you moved away, the more the Milky Way would stop feeling like a location and start feeling like a memory. It would still be enormous. It would still contain hundreds of billions of stars, but from the outside, even that enormous structure would begin to look limited. A bright thing surrounded by black. This is where the void begins to show its scale. As long as you are inside the galaxy, the stars around you hide the emptiness. They fill the sky with reference points. They make the universe feel inhabited. But when the galaxy begins to fall behind, the stars no longer surround you in the same way. Behind you, light. Ahead of you, distance. The sky would become asymmetrical. One side would contain the Milky Way, glowing like an enormous island. The other side would open toward the intergalactic dark. Other galaxies would be visible, but they would not feel close. They would be faint, separate, far beyond reach. They would not replace the missing stars around you. They would only remind you how far apart the islands are. This is the beginning of the true void feeling. You are not blind. You can still see galaxies. But seeing a galaxy is not the same as being near a star. A galaxy can contain billions of suns and still appear like a faint smudge if it is far enough away. That is what intergalactic space does to light. It does not remove it completely. It pushes it away until it no longer feels like part of your world. There is still light in the universe. Galaxies still shine, stars still burn, radiation still moves through space, but the light is no longer around you. It is gathered into faraway structures. It no longer creates the feeling of a sky. It becomes something you look at from outside. The universe would stop feeling like a room. It would feel like a set of distant islands in an ocean without shores, and you would be between them. That is why leaving the Milky Way would be emotionally different from leaving Earth. Leaving Earth is painful because you leave a planet. Leaving the Milky Way is terrifying because you leave context. Earth is a world. The solar system is a neighborhood. The Milky Way is the larger city of stars. But beyond the galaxy, even the city is gone. The traveler belongs only to their vessel and to a direction across the dark. The structure that once contained the entire human world would slowly become just another light in the dark. If the Milky Way can become small, then Earth becomes almost beyond imagination. The planet does not merely disappear from view. It becomes hidden inside a star, inside a region, inside a disk, inside a galaxy shrinking behind you. Leaving the Milky Way would make that separation permanent. The farther out you go, the more home becomes something you calculate, not something you see. A coordinate, a record, a direction, a story. That would be one of the quiet emotional costs of leaving the Milky Way. Navigation may still know exactly where the sun is. The computers may still track the ship's origin with precision. The archive may still contain images of Earth in perfect detail. But the human eye would no longer confirm any of it. Home would move from sight into memory, from memory into data, and from data into belief. And ahead, the void waits. And if you were leaving the Milky Way, you would feel this gradually. The feeling would not arrive in one dramatic moment. It would build over time, each year making the galaxy behind you slightly smaller, each century making the nearby stars less relevant. That would change the meaning of belonging. The sky stops wrapping around you. It opens, and what it opens into is almost nothing. The Milky Way is a refuge, a bright, gravitational refuge filled with suns. To leave it is to enter the larger condition of the cosmos. Distance, almost nothing nearby, and light that exists mostly far away. By then, the Milky Way would no longer be the sky. It would be the place the sky used to belong to. A bright island behind the ship, carrying the sun somewhere inside it, while the darkness ahead contains no nearby shore. This is the emotional threshold of intergalactic space. Not the moment when every star vanishes, but the moment when the stars stop feeling like your surroundings. And once you are far enough from the galaxy, the next question becomes unavoidable. What does the sky look like when the stars truly begin to disappear? Not because the universe has fewer stars, but because you have moved to a place where almost none of them are close enough to feel like part of your world. That is when the sky begins to change in a way human eyes were never meant to experience. From Earth, a starry sky feels natural. Even when the night is dark, it is not pure darkness. It has texture, it has points of light. Some stars are bright enough to recognize again and again. Some form patterns that people turned into constellations, stories, calendars, maps, and myths. The sky above Earth can feel mysterious, but it still feels like a sky. It gives the eyes something to hold. Inside the Milky Way, that is still mostly true. Even far from Earth, even far from the sun, a traveler would still look out into a sky filled with stars from the same galaxy. The constellations would change because the position would be different, but the sky would still feel like a starfield. There would still be points of light in many directions. There would still be enough nearby suns to make the universe feel populated. But as the ship moves farther from the Milky Way, that starfield begins to thin. Not suddenly, not like lights being switched off. Slowly. The nearby stars are no longer nearby. The galaxy gathers behind the ship. What used to be a sky becomes a direction. The points of light that once surrounded the traveler begin to collect into the glowing shape of the Milky Way, while the rest of the universe opens into a darker emptiness. This is the first true visual shock of intergalactic space. The stars do not vanish because they stop existing. They vanish because you are no longer among them. A galaxy is not only a collection of stars, it is also the thing that makes stars feel common. While you're inside it, the sky is filled with local light. The stars may be far away by human standards, but they still belong to the same vast structure. They are part of the same cosmic environment. They make space feel inhabited. Once you leave the galaxy, that feeling begins to disappear. The sky loses its texture. There are fewer bright points, fewer familiar patterns, fewer nearby lights that feel like places. The darkness between galaxies no longer feels like the background behind stars. It becomes the main thing you see. This is difficult to imagine because human perception depends on reference points. On Earth, the world is full of them. Trees, buildings, roads, clouds, horizons, the sun, the moon. Even the night sky gives reference points through stars. But in intergalactic space, most of those anchors are gone. Not poor in reality, core in closeness. A distant galaxy may contain hundreds of billions of stars, but from between galaxies, it may appear only as a faint smudge or a pale oval. The numbers are enormous, but the experience is empty. That is one of the strangest truths about scale. A billion stars can look like almost nothing if they are far enough away. Quantity does not always feel like fullness. This is why the sky of the void would be so unsettling. It would not be completely black everywhere. There would still be galaxies. There would still be faint light. There would still be ancient radiation passing through the darkness. But most of it would be too distant to feel immediate. The light would not surround you in the way stars surround us from inside the Milky Way. It would sit far away, gathered into islands. Behind the ship, the Milky Way might still be the brightest structure for a long time. At first, it could look enormous, glowing softly with its spiral arms and dust lanes. But over time, it would shrink. It would no longer be overhead. It would no longer be all around. It would be behind. A single structure. A former home. Ahead, another galaxy might wait. Maybe Andromeda. Maybe a smaller galaxy. Maybe a target too faint for the human eye to notice without instruments. But whatever lies ahead would not feel close. It would not shine with the sharpness of a nearby star. It would not cast warmth. It would not create day. It would be a faraway glow, a promise, or a destination, but not an environment. That darkness would be the view, not a patch of darkness, not a gap. The view itself. This is where the word empty begins to become emotional. Scientifically, intergalactic space is not perfectly empty, but to human senses, it would feel close to absolute emptiness. We evolved inside places full of nearby surfaces, textures, smells, sounds, motion, air, weather, and light. Intergalactic space offers almost none of that. It is not only far from Earth, it is far from the kind of environment that makes perception feel useful. A window might show almost no change for years, maybe for lifetimes. The Milky Way slowly shrinks. A distant galaxy slowly brightens. The blackness remains. For a human mind, that may be harder than danger. Danger has shape. A storm, a fire, a collision warning, a failing engine. These are terrifying, but they tell you what to fear. But a sky that is mostly empty does something quieter. It does not attack. It simply removes meaning. That is the terror of the stars disappearing. It is not a scream. It is a removal. The universe takes away familiar markers one by one until there is almost nothing left to interpret. This would affect the feeling of motion. The ship's computers would know the course. Instruments would measure velocity, direction, radiation, background light, and the positions of galaxies. But the human eye would not feel progress. The ship could be moving at incredible speed and still seem suspended inside the same darkness. The objects are too far away to change quickly. A galaxy millions of light years ahead does not grow noticeably in a day or a year. The void makes even speed feel still. The ship would become the only immediate place. Its walls, lights, corridors, instruments, plants, voices, and moving air would matter more than the view outside. Outside, the universe becomes almost abstract. Inside, the ship becomes reality. Everything outside is too far or too faint. The old sky would be gone. Not destroyed, not erased, just left behind. For them, darkness would not be the absence between stars. It would be the basic condition of the universe. That would change culture. Humans have always used the sky for rhythm and meaning. Sunrise, sunset, moon phases, seasons, constellations, calendars, navigation, stories. Even on a spacecraft, people could create artificial days and preserve old calendars. But the outside sky would no longer help. There would be no natural sunrise, no changing constellations rich enough to guide tradition, no nearby star moving across a horizon. Time would become mechanical. A clock inside the ship, a cycle of lights, a schedule of maintenance, a calendar inherited from worlds left behind. The void does not provide rhythm. The ship must provide rhythm. The void does not provide horizon. The ship must provide direction. The void does not provide belonging. The ship must create it. People raised under a rich sky may think of the universe as full of destinations. People raised between galaxies may think of the universe as mostly separation. Neither view is wrong. They come from different positions inside reality. And position matters. From Earth, space begins with the sun and a familiar starry night. From between galaxies, space begins with distance so large that even galaxies seem lonely. There is another strange visual paradox here. The sky may look emptier, but the few visible lights may represent objects far larger than any star. A single faint patch could be an entire galaxy. A small glow could contain billions of suns. The eye sees less. The mind must know more. And that gap between sight and knowledge can feel unsettling. That is when the universe becomes quiet in a deeper way. Not only silent in sound, quiet in visual information. There are fewer signals for the human brain to turn into meaning, fewer patterns, fewer landmarks, fewer changes. Darkness, distant glow, darkness again. And yet, that quiet view would be honest. The starry sky we know is not the normal view from everywhere. It is the view from inside a rich structure. Leave that structure, and the universe does not remain romantically filled with stars. It becomes sparse, cold, almost blank. This is why a distant galaxy might be beautiful, because it is unreachable. The Milky Way might be beautiful because it contains a home too small to see, and the blackness might be terrifying because it is not hiding the universe. It is the universe. For a traveler, the stars disappearing would not mean wonder is gone. It would mean wonder becomes colder and less comforting. The beauty is no longer a sky full of lights. It is the knowledge of what those few lights represent and how much darkness lies between them. It is a beauty that requires understanding, because the eyes alone receive almost nothing. And after enough time in that darkness, a traveler would begin to realize something even stranger. Even here, in what feels like almost perfect emptiness, the void is not truly empty. It has matter. It has radiation. It has gravity. It has invisible structure. It may contain lonely stars, rogue planets, faint gas, dark matter, and ancient particles moving through spaces no human eye could ever see directly. But to a human being looking out from the ship, almost none of that would matter emotionally at first. Because the next terrifying truth is that the void between galaxies is not empty. It only feels empty because almost everything inside it is too thin, too dark, too distant, or too invisible for us to experience as a world. That is the next strange truth about the void between galaxies. It is not completely empty. It only feels that way. When people imagine the space between galaxies, they often picture perfect nothingness, a black gap with no matter, no light, no movement, no particles, no history. Just a dead space between the beautiful things. But the universe is rarely that simple. Even the emptiest places still have something. There may be atoms drifting there, spread so thinly that the best vacuum chambers on Earth would seem crowded by comparison. There may be faint gas stretched across millions of light years. There may be radiation from ancient events. There may be particles passing through from distant explosions. There may be dark matter shaping the motion of galaxies, invisible but gravitationally important. The void is not nothing. It is almost nothing. And that difference is terrifying in its own way, because almost nothing is enough to matter scientifically, but not enough to feel like a place. A human being would not look out and see the faint gas. They would not see individual atoms. They would not see dark matter. They would not see most radiation. Instruments might detect some of it. Equations might describe it. Maps might show that the void is part of something larger, but the eyes would see darkness. This is the gap between the scientific universe and the human universe. Science can tell us that intergalactic space contains matter. Human senses would still experience it as emptiness. That gap matters because humans do not live inside equations. We can understand numbers, but we feel places through light, texture, motion, warmth, and nearness. The void between galaxies may contain particles, but it does not contain enough nearby structure to feel like an environment. No ground, no air, no horizon, no weather, no nearby sunlight, no surface, no natural shelter, no obvious direction that feels safe. That is why the void can be real without being livable. This is why saying the void is not empty does not make it less frightening. In some ways, it makes it stranger. Perfect nothingness would be simple. But the real void is not simple. It is a place where things exist, but not in a way human beings can easily relate to. It is a thin reality, a universe reduced almost entirely to distance. This would make intergalactic space deeply unnatural for human intuition. On Earth, visible things dominate: water, clouds, trees, fire, cities, animals, people. Even when something invisible matters, like air or gravity, it is tied to experience. We feel wind. We feel weight. But in the void, the most important structures may be detectable only through instruments and indirect effects. The human eye becomes almost useless. Not completely useless, but humbled. The instruments, however, would tell a different story. They might show that the ship is not crossing a blank nothing, but a thin region of the cosmic web. The universe, on the largest scales, is not organized like random dots on a page. Galaxies gather into groups, clusters, walls, and filaments, while vast voids open between them. Intergalactic space is part of that structure. It is not outside the universe's design. It is one of the ways that design appears. But this knowledge would not make the view feel less lonely. A map can show structure where the eye sees none. A detector can find particles where the body feels nothing. The mind can understand that the ship is moving through a real cosmic environment, but the senses still receive almost no evidence of place. That is what makes the void so unsettling. It is meaningful to science, but nearly meaningless to instinct. If you found a rogue planet between galaxies, it might be one of the loneliest worlds imaginable. No parent star, no warm sky, no familiar system. Only distant galaxies hanging far away, like pale memories. It would not make the void feel full. It would make the emptiness around it feel even larger. So the void is not empty in the simple sense. It is empty in the human sense. It lacks density. It lacks nearness. It lacks the kind of structure that turns space into a place. If you were inside a spacecraft there, your instruments might show that the region is scientifically rich. They might measure faint particles, background radiation, gravitational influence, and the positions of distant galaxies. The science could be profound. But outside the window, the human experience would remain stark. Blackness, distant smudges, the ship's reflection in the glass. This is where the void becomes psychological. The knowledge that matter exists there does not remove the feeling of abandonment. A desert on Earth may look empty, but it has ground under your feet and a horizon around you. The ocean may be vast, but it has waves, wind, motion, and a surface. Intergalactic space has almost none of these sensory anchors. It is not emptiness you can stand in. It is emptiness you can only survive inside a machine. And the machine becomes everything. Inside the ship, every detail would become more important because the outside gives so little back. A light turning on in a corridor would matter more than a distant galaxy. A plant leaf under artificial lamps would feel more alive than a billion faint stars blended into a blur. A cup of warm water, a human voice, a hand touching a wall, the sound of ventilation. These ordinary things would become proof that something close still exists. The void makes nearness precious. On Earth, Humans can take nearness for granted. There is always ground, air, weather, sound, smell, and texture. In the void, almost all of that has to be manufactured. Nothing close is natural, except the ship itself. The vessel is not just protecting people from the universe. It is creating the only small region of the universe that still feels human. It carries the air, it carries the warmth, it carries the light, it carries the pressure. It carries the rhythm of day and night. It carries every close thing. Outside it, the universe is not hostile in the dramatic sense. It is indifferent. There may be no monster waiting, no wall of fire, no sudden attack from the darkness. The danger is more basic than that. If the ship fails, there is nothing nearby to replace what it provides. The void does not offer backup, shelter, or materials in any useful concentration. That is why not empty does not mean usable. This is what makes the void feel so close to nothing. It is not the absence of existence. It is the absence of availability. Everything that matters is too far, too faint, too thin, or too cold. And that is why the void between galaxies may be one of the most honest places in the universe. It strips away the illusion that space is naturally generous. It shows that matter can exist without forming a world. Light can exist without making a sky. Gravity can exist without giving a home. Objects can exist without being reachable. The universe is not empty. But it is not built around human need. This may be the most important emotional truth of the chapter. The void does not hate life. It does not try to destroy anything. It is not evil, angry, or violent. It is simply arranged on scales that have almost nothing to do with us. Human beings need concentration, air dense enough to breathe, water close enough to drink, energy strong enough to warm us, matter gathered enough to build with, and time short enough for action to matter. The void offers almost none of that in a direct way. It contains reality, but not support. This realization changes how we think about galaxies. A galaxy is not just a beautiful structure. It is a rare concentration, a place where matter has gathered enough to make stars common, where stars make planets possible, and where chemistry has a chance to become rich. Galaxies are not just decorations in the darkness. They are the places where complexity becomes easier. Between them, complexity thins. This is the terrifying balance. Intergalactic space is scientifically rich, but humanly empty. The void is not empty, but it is empty of almost everything humans instinctively search for. Nearby light, nearby warmth, nearby matter, nearby places, and nearby help. That is the key word, nearby. The universe may contain endless wonders, but distance decides whether those wonders matter to you. A galaxy a million light-years away can be magnificent and still useless if you need warmth now. A field of faint gas can be important to cosmology and still meaningless if you need air. In the void, distance turns existence into absence. That may be the deepest reason it feels empty. Not because nothing is there, because almost nothing is near. And as the ship moves farther into this almost empty region, the emotional reality becomes harder to ignore. The Milky Way is no longer around you. The stars no longer form a familiar sky. The faint matter of the void does not comfort you. The ship is surrounded by a universe that is technically present, but experientially missing. That is when the loneliness becomes more than an idea. It becomes the view. Behind you, one galaxy fades into distance. Ahead of you, another waits beyond a scale too large to feel real. Around you, the void contains things you can measure, but almost nothing you can belong to. And that may create one of the most lonely views in the universe. Not because there is no light anywhere, but because all the light that matters feels impossibly far away. That is what would make the view between galaxies so lonely. It would not be total blackness. There would still be light in the universe. The Milky Way would still glow behind the ship. Other galaxies would still exist ahead, to the sides, and far beyond direct human sight. Instruments could find them. Long exposures could reveal them. Maps could name them. The ship would know that it is not floating in a universe without structure. But the human eye would not feel surrounded. It would feel abandoned. A lonely view is not created only by darkness. It is created by distance. A person can stand under a starry sky on Earth and feel small, but not completely alone, because the stars are everywhere. But in the void between galaxies, the lights gather into distant islands. They do not fill the sky in the same way. They do not create a ceiling or a neighborhood. They remind you that everything is elsewhere. Behind you, the Milky Way may still be visible. At first, it might look magnificent, a soft spiral glow holding hundreds of billions of stars. Not a band across the sky anymore, but the whole galaxy seen from outside. A complete home island, turning slowly in the dark. And yet, that beauty would hurt. Because somewhere inside that glow is the sun, and somewhere around that sun is Earth. And from this distance, neither can be seen. That is one of the most painful ideas in cosmic scale. The galaxy can still be visible, but the things that made it home are gone from sight. You can see the island, but not the room where you were born. It is there, but not for your eyes. Ahead, another galaxy may wait. Perhaps Andromeda, perhaps a smaller galaxy, perhaps a target chosen long before the journey began. It may be bright enough for instruments, but to a person looking through a window, it might be only a faint glow. That glow may contain more stars than the mind can imagine, but emotionally, it would not feel like a world yet. It would feel like a promise too far away to touch. This is the strange loneliness of intergalactic space. The traveler is between homes. Behind them is the galaxy they came from, too distant to feel close. Ahead is another island of stars, too far to feel real. Around them is the void, containing matter, radiation, gravity, and invisible structure, but almost nothing that can answer the senses. There is no nearby world, no nearby star, no nearby moon, no sky full of local light, no horizon, no natural sound, no reason for the human body to feel that it belongs there. The ship becomes the only place that feels real. If someone stood at an observation window, they might see their own reflection more clearly than the universe outside. Their face in the glass, the dim lights of the room behind them, the curve of the window, maybe the faint glow of the Milky Way in the distance, maybe another galaxy far ahead. But most of the view would be black. That reflection would matter, because in the void, the closest human thing may be yourself. The closest warm thing may be the room behind you. The closest living thing may be another person standing beside you. Everything else is too distant to feel alive. It is not only social loneliness. A ship could be full of people and still feel cosmically alone. You could hear voices in the corridors, eat with others, work, sleep, argue, and celebrate, while still knowing that outside the hull, there is no natural environment waiting for you. The people may not be alone with each other, but together they are alone against the universe. That is why the view would be so powerful. It would show the difference between human scale and cosmic scale without needing words. The ship might contain thousands of lives, farms, memories, languages, machines, and histories. But through the window, all of that would be surrounded by a darkness so large that even galaxies become small. The mind would struggle with that contrast. Inside, everything matters. Outside, nothing seems to notice. A child crying matters inside the ship. A pump failing matters. A meal being prepared matters. A plant growing under artificial light matters. But outside, the void remains unchanged. It does not react to human meaning. It simply continues. This is not cruelty. It is indifference. And cosmic indifference can feel more frightening than danger. Danger implies attention. Something threatens you. Something moves toward you. Something breaks. Something happens. Indifference means the universe is not even centered on your survival. It does not oppose you, but it also does not support you. The void between galaxies is terrifying because it makes that truth visible. There is no nearby nature to negotiate with, no environment to adapt to, no landscape to read, no signs, no shelter, no help, just distance. The lonely view would also change the meaning of rescue. Inside a galaxy, rescue is already difficult across stellar distances. But between galaxies, the idea becomes almost absurd. If something goes wrong, who could come? From where? Across what time? The view itself would remind the crew of that. Every distant glow is not only beautiful, it is unreachable. Every galaxy is not only a possible place, it is also a reminder of how far away places can be. Some people might find peace in that. They might look at the distant galaxies and feel awe. They might feel privileged to see the Milky Way from outside, to understand the universe on a scale no human from Earth ever could. Others might feel dread. They might see the same view and feel trapped. The Milky Way behind them is too far. The next galaxy ahead is too far. The ship is too small. The darkness is too large. Both reactions would be human. Awe and fear often live close together in space. The most lonely view in the universe may also be beautiful. That is part of what makes it disturbing. A galaxy seen from far away could be one of the most stunning sights imaginable. A pale spiral suspended in blackness, a structure made of billions of suns, glowing silently across the void. But knowing what it contains makes the beauty heavier. Every point of light inside that glow is a star. Many of those stars may have planets. Some planets may have oceans, storms, ice, atmospheres, or maybe life. And yet from the void, all of that becomes one faint shape. The details disappear into distance. That is the cruel elegance of the universe. It can make something enormous look small. It can make something full of worlds look like a stain of light. It can reduce entire histories to a faint patch in the darkness. This view would teach humility in a way no philosophy could. It would show that scale does not care about human importance. A world can be everything to the beings living on it, and invisible from a distance. A galaxy can contain countless suns, and still be only one island among many. The lonely view is not lonely because nothing exists. It is lonely because existence is spread so far apart. The universe is not absent, it is remote. And remote existence creates longing. You can see something and still be separated from it by so much distance that seeing it almost hurts. A person looking at a distant galaxy may know it is real, may know it contains stars, may know that somewhere inside it there could be worlds. But none of that brings it closer. The light arrives. The place does not. That is the deepest loneliness of astronomy. Light can cross the void, but we cannot follow it easily. A telescope can receive a galaxy's image, but a human life cannot cross the same distance. The universe allows vision where it denies arrival. It lets us know that things are there, while keeping them impossibly far away. In intergalactic space, that truth becomes the whole sky. Nothing feels immediate except the ship. This is why the ship's interior would become emotionally central. Its rooms are present. Its people are present. Its systems are present. The farms are growing now. The lights are on now. Against a universe of distant light, the ship is the only place where the present can be touched. That may give the ship a sacred quality, not necessarily in a religious sense, but in a human sense. The vessel is the only warm fact in an otherwise remote universe. It holds the only voices that can answer immediately. It holds the only faces close enough to see clearly. In the void between galaxies, the ship is not just a machine. It is the center of lived reality. The most lonely view in the universe may therefore create two opposite feelings at the same time. It makes the ship feel impossibly small, but also impossibly precious. Small, because it is surrounded by distances no human mind can hold. Precious, because it is the only place nearby where anything human exists. Outside the window, the universe is vast. Inside the ship, someone is breathing. That contrast may be the emotional core of intergalactic space. It is the difference between scale and value. The void has scale. The ship has value. And those two things are not the same, because the view never stops. Every time someone looks outside, the same truth returns. The Milky Way behind, the dark around, the distant glow ahead, the ship in between. The window remains a reminder that the larger universe is almost unimaginably empty of nearby help, because no society crossing intergalactic space could ignore the outside forever. Even if most daily life happens inside the ship, the knowledge remains. They are between galaxies. The nearest great structures are not near. The familiar sky is gone, and still they continue. The most lonely view in the universe would not be a place where absolutely nothing can be seen. It would be a place where what can be seen is too far away to feel like company. A galaxy behind you, a galaxy ahead, darkness between, and the small reflection of your own ship in the glass. That is where the loneliness becomes complete. Not because the universe is empty, but because the ship has become the only nearby answer to the question of where you belong. And once that truth is understood, the next fear becomes even clearer. If distance can make galaxies feel unreachable, then distance can also make rescue impossible. Communication fragile, and every mistake inside the ship more serious. Because in the void between galaxies, loneliness is not only emotional, it is practical. And the deeper you travel into that darkness, the more distance itself becomes the real danger. Not a monster, not a storm, not a wall of fire waiting in the black. Distance. That is what makes the void between galaxies so terrifying. Because in ordinary life, distance is something humans can understand. A city can be far away. Another country can be far away. Even the moon feels far away. And it is. But those distances still belong to a universe where connection feels possible. Help may be difficult, travel may be dangerous, communication may be delayed. But the idea of reaching, returning, or answering does not completely break. Intergalactic distance breaks it. Between galaxies, distance becomes more than space between objects. It changes what rescue means. It changes what communication means. It changes what planning means. It changes how serious every mistake becomes. In a place where almost nothing is near, even a small failure can become enormous, because there is nowhere nearby to turn. Inside a galaxy, the distances are already extreme. The nearest stars are light years apart. Even traveling between nearby star systems would challenge any civilization. But at least inside a galaxy, stars exist in great numbers. There are possible destinations. There are systems to study. There may be planets, asteroids, energy sources, and places where matter has gathered. The galaxy is vast, but it is populated. Between galaxies, that changes. The next major structure may not be a star a few light years away. It may be a galaxy millions of light years away. That is a different kind of far. A ship moving through the void might still be traveling incredibly fast. It might still be following a route. It might still be aimed at a destination. but the scale would make progress feel almost meaningless to human senses. A ship could travel for generations and still be between the same two distant lights. It could move faster than any human craft ever built, and still barely change the view outside. This is where distance becomes psychological. A journey becomes harder to believe in when the outside barely changes. On Earth, progress usually has signs. A mountain grows closer. A coastline appears. A city rises on the horizon. Even in the solar system, a planet can slowly grow larger in the window. But in intergalactic space, the destination may remain a faint glow for lifetimes. The galaxy behind may shrink only slowly. The darkness around may look almost identical from one generation to the next. Progress becomes something measured by instruments, not felt by the body, not seen by the eye. That can be dangerous for morale. If people live their entire lives inside a ship and never see the destination change in a meaningful way, the journey can start to feel abstract. The mission becomes numbers, charts, inherited promises, and trust in navigation systems. The ship may be moving, but emotionally it can feel trapped. Distance can make motion feel like stillness. It also makes rescue almost meaningless. If something goes wrong near a planet, there may be a base, a station, another ship, or some nearby source of help in an imagined future. But in the void between galaxies, rescue becomes less like an emergency response and more like a fantasy. Who would come? From which galaxy? Across how many light years? And how long would it take? Even if another civilization existed somewhere, even if it detected a distress signal, and even if it wanted to help, the signal itself would need enormous time to reach them. Their answer would need enormous time to come back. A rescue craft, if one could be sent, would face the same distances. By the time help arrived, the original emergency could be ancient history. This changes the meaning of danger. A damaged engine is not only a damaged engine, it is the loss of options. A failing life support system is not only a repair problem, it is a race with no outside backup. A navigation error is not only a wrong turn, it may become centuries of wasted distance. That is why distance makes every mistake heavier. In a dense environment, mistakes can sometimes be corrected by changing direction, finding help, gathering resources, or returning to a known place. In the intergalactic void, correction becomes expensive. Every course change costs energy. Every delay costs time. Every repair consumes material carried from long ago. Every wrong assumption can become part of the lives of people not yet born. The ship would need to think on timescales humans are not naturally built for. A small loss of fuel might matter generations later. A tiny navigational error might become vast after enough time. A weak maintenance culture might not destroy the ship immediately, but could leave future crews with systems too degraded to recover. Distance turns small errors into long consequences. Communication is another place where distance becomes frightening. Light is fast by human standards, but slow against the scale of galaxies. A message crossing intergalactic distance may take millions of years, depending on how far it has to travel. A signal sent from the ship may arrive long after the people who sent it are gone. Any reply may return to descendants who know the original sender only as a name in the archive. That is not communication in the normal sense. It is archaeology. A message becomes a fossil of thought. A question becomes a historical artifact before anyone answers it. This would change how a civilization thinks about speaking into the universe. A distress call may still be sent, but not because help is expected soon. A scientific report may still be transmitted, but not because anyone will discuss it with the sender. A message to Earth, or to another galaxy, may become an act of memory rather than conversation. The void makes every signal lonely, not because no one could ever receive it, but because no living relationship can easily survive the delay. This is difficult to accept because humans are built around response. We speak and wait for an answer. We ask and expect someone to hear. Intergalactic distance breaks that feeling. The other side may exist, but it exists outside the emotional rhythm of human life. The universe can allow contact while denying conversation. That is one of the strangest cruelties of distance. Distance also makes knowledge uncertain. If the ship observes a distant galaxy, it is not seeing the galaxy exactly as it is now. It is seeing old light. The destination ahead may have changed since the light began traveling. A star may have died. A region may have shifted. A hazard may exist that the ship cannot yet see. The view is not the present. It is history arriving as light. Everywhere the ship looks, distance mixes space with time. There is no instant truth. There is only delayed evidence. In a solar system, delay can be managed. Between galaxies, delay becomes the environment. Navigation would also become a problem of patience. A ship crossing intergalactic space cannot rely on familiar landmarks the way a sailor relies on coastlines. It must use distant galaxies, background radiation, internal clocks, inertial systems, and careful measurement. But over immense time, small uncertainties matter. A tiny error in direction may become a huge separation after enough time. The farther the destination, the less forgiving the path. This does not mean navigation is impossible. It means it must be incredibly precise. The ship would need to understand its own motion, fuel, target, and the gravitational influences around it. A future generation must understand why the ship is pointed the way it is, not merely trust that it is, because in the void, blind trust can become dangerous. If no one understands the path, then the path becomes ritual. And ritual is not enough to cross millions of light years. Distance also affects resources. In many journeys, humans imagine there is at least some possibility of finding supplies along the way. A port, a station, a planet, a moon, an asteroid, a place to stop, repair, mine, refuel, or recover. But the void between galaxies offers almost nothing concentrated enough to use easily. Matter may exist, but it is spread thinly. Objects may exist, but they are rare and difficult to find. Energy may exist, but not in the friendly form of nearby sunlight. This means the ship carries its future with it. Every tool, every spare part, every seed, every gram of usable material, every method of recycling, every machine that makes other machines, every piece of knowledge needed to keep all of it working. Distance makes self-sufficiency absolute, not temporary, not emergency only. Absolute. If the ship loses the ability to repair a system, no outside workshop replaces it. If it loses a crop line, no nearby world sends new seeds. If it loses medical knowledge, no hospital across the void restores it. The ship is not merely far from help. It is functionally alone. This is where distance becomes a kind of pressure. Not pressure against the hull, pressure against civilization. The farther a society travels into such emptiness, the more every internal system matters. Education matters because knowledge cannot be imported quickly. Social trust matters because conflict has nowhere to go. Maintenance matters because replacement cannot be assumed. Health matters because disease cannot be outsourced. Memory matters because forgotten methods may be impossible to rediscover in time. The void makes everything local. Local knowledge, local repair, local politics, local food, local medicine, local courage. In a universe of enormous scale, survival becomes extremely local. That contrast is frightening. The ship may be moving through distances measured in light years, but survival may depend on someone tightening a seal, cleaning a filter, teaching a child mathematics, testing a water sample, or noticing a small change in a machine's sound. The vastness outside does not make the small things less important. It makes them more important. Because there is no backup. Distance also changes fear itself. On Earth, fear often has direction. A storm approaches. A fire spreads. A disease moves through a population. In the void, the greatest fear may not approach at all. It may simply be the knowledge that nothing can approach quickly enough to help. The danger is not what comes toward you. It is what cannot come. That is a very quiet kind of terror. A crew might know that somewhere behind them lies the Milky Way, full of stars. Somewhere ahead lies another galaxy, full of possible suns. But between those two facts is a present reality. None of it is near. The nearest useful place may be so far away that the word near becomes almost meaningless. The ship can point to destinations, but it cannot rely on them. The void turns the future into a long bet. A bet that the ship will last. A bet that the destination is still worth reaching. A bet that future generations will keep the systems alive. A bet that the course is right. A bet that no failure becomes too large before there is any place to stop. Every long journey involves trust, but this kind of journey demands trust across time. A person repairing a system may never see the full result of their work. A child studying navigation may be protecting a destination they will never reach. A society may spend centuries paying for decisions made by ancestors. Distance turns survival into inheritance. That can give life meaning, but it can also become heavy. People may ask why they must spend their entire lives crossing a darkness they did not choose. They may ask why a destination beyond any personal lifetime should matter more than the present. They may ask whether the ship is still traveling or simply maintaining an ancient decision. Those questions are not weakness. They are what distance does to purpose. The farther away the destination, the more meaning must be renewed from inside. A mission cannot survive only because someone long ago wrote it down. It must be understood again and again. It must be chosen again and again, or at least accepted with enough trust that people continue the work. The void gives no emotional encouragement. It does not show the destination growing quickly. It does not provide landmarks that make progress feel real. The society must produce its own reasons to continue. That may be harder than engineering. A machine can be designed for long duration. A culture must keep believing across long duration. And belief, unlike metal, cannot simply be manufactured once and stored. It has to be maintained. This is why the void between galaxies is terrifying, even if nothing attacks you there. It is terrifying because distance can turn every ordinary problem into a civilizational test. It can turn communication into ancient history. It can turn rescue into an impossibility. It can turn motion into stillness. It can turn a destination into a belief rather than a visible place. The danger is not only physical, it is conceptual. It forces humans to live inside scales that our instincts cannot truly process. We can say millions of light years. We can write the number. We can animate it on a screen. But to live inside that distance would be something else entirely. It would mean accepting that the universe outside the window will not change fast enough to comfort you. It would mean accepting that most messages may never become conversations. It would mean accepting that the nearest bright islands are not near at all. And still, the ship must function. The lights must turn on. The farms must grow. The children must learn. The engines must be maintained. The course must be checked. The culture must hold. That is the real terror of distance. It does not replace daily life. It surrounds it. People still wake up, work, eat, argue, love, rest, repair, and remember. But all of it happens inside an environment where one fact is always true. No one nearby is coming. That fact would shape every emergency plan. It would shape every law. It would shape every classroom. It would shape every repair schedule. The ship would have to become more careful, because distance gives no second chances quickly. It would have to become more honest because hidden problems cannot be exported. It would have to become more patient because the journey cannot be forced into human emotional timescales. And perhaps, over time, the people on board would learn to live with distance, not as a temporary obstacle, but as the background condition of their civilization. They would not think of themselves as almost arriving. They would think of themselves as crossing. They would not measure life only by destination. They would measure it by continuity. This may be the only way to remain sane in the intergalactic void, to understand that distance is terrible, but not meaningless. It separates, but it also reveals. It shows how rare closeness is. It shows how precious a functioning community is. It shows that a tiny warm ship can matter, even when surrounded by scales too large for comfort. But the practical question remains. Could anything survive there for long? Could a human vessel, a robot probe, a rogue planet, a lonely star, or even a civilization endure in a place where help is distant, energy is scarce, and every mistake has nowhere to hide? The void does not make survival impossible simply by being dark, but it makes survival depend on one brutal condition. Whatever enters it must bring almost everything it needs with it. That is the first rule of surviving in the void between galaxies. The darkness itself is not what kills you immediately. Darkness is only the absence of nearby light. The void does not burn like a star, crush like a black hole, or tear like a violent collision. It is quieter than that, colder than that, more patient than that. The real danger is that almost nothing useful is close enough to save you. So the question becomes simple. Could anything survive there? The answer is yes, but only in a very specific way. Something can survive in intergalactic space if it does not depend on the void giving it anything. It must carry energy, structure, repair, protection, and purpose with it. Or it must already be the kind of object that does not need much from the outside at all. The void is not a place that supports life. It is a place that tests whether a thing can support itself. A human being alone could not survive there. Not outside a ship, not in a suit forever, not with courage, not with training. The human body is built for a planet. It expects pressure, warmth, air, gravity, water, food, and a living environment. The void between galaxies offers none of those things in any useful form. A person outside a vessel would not experience the void as a mysterious landscape. They would experience vacuum, radiation, extreme cold, and the complete absence of anything the body can use. So if humans ever crossed intergalactic space, the true survivor would not be the body, it would be the habitat. The ship would survive inside it. That distinction matters. In the void, a spacecraft is not just transportation, it is the planet. It must provide air, pressure, temperature, water, food, light, medicine, waste recycling, social order, and protection from radiation and time. If the ship fails, the people do not step outside and adapt to the environment. There is no environment for them. There is only space. A human vessel could survive there only if it was designed less like a ship and more like a closed world. It would need long-term energy, not energy for days or years, but for generations, perhaps longer. It would need reactors, stored fuel, fusion systems, or some other source powerful and reliable enough to keep life support running through enormous spans of time. Solar power would become far less useful far from any star. The ship could still collect faint background light, but not enough to live like a world. It would need its own heart. It would need food systems that do not depend on outside supply. Farms, algae tanks, hydroponics, seed banks, nutrient recycling, and emergency reserves. Every meal would come from matter already on board. Every plant would grow, because the ship creates light and cycles water. In the void, Agriculture becomes an act of defiance. Green life maintained in a region where nature offers no nearby sun, soil, rain, or season. It would need water recycling so complete that waste becomes future life. It would need air systems that turn exhaled breath back into breathable atmosphere. It would need machines that repair machines. It would need people trained to understand systems older than themselves. Because in the void, failure is not only mechanical, it is generational. A pump that wears down is not just a pump. It is a test of whether the society still remembers how to build, repair, and replace it. A farm disease is not just a biological problem. It is a test of whether the ship still has diversity, knowledge, and patience. A power system issue is not just an engineering event. It is a test of whether the entire artificial world can keep its heartbeat. That is why a human civilization could survive there only if it became extremely careful. Careful with material, careful with energy, careful with knowledge, careful with trust. The void would punish waste slowly. It would punish ignorance quietly. It would punish arrogance across generations. It would not need to attack. It would simply wait while the ship used up what it could not replace. A robot probe would have a different kind of chance. A machine can sleep. A machine does not need food. A machine can shut down most systems and wake only when needed. A robot crossing intergalactic space might survive far longer than a crewed ship if it had durable components, radiation shielding, stable power, and a mission simple enough to continue over immense time. It could drift through the dark like a sealed memory, carrying data, instruments, and instructions. But even a robot is not safe from time. Electronics degrade, materials crack, power sources weaken, radiation can slowly damage systems. Dust impacts, even rare ones, can matter at high speed. A machine does not fear loneliness, but it still obeys physics. The void may look empty, but enough time turns small risks into real risks. This is one of the strange lessons of deep time. Nothing has to happen quickly for the danger to be real. A tiny failure rate can become enormous if the journey is long enough. A robot probe could survive better than a human, but it would still need to be built for patience almost beyond imagination. Then, there are natural objects. A rogue planet, thrown out of a galaxy or born in some lonely way, could drift through intergalactic space. It would not need air from outside. It would not need a destination. It would simply move through the dark, carrying its own mass and history. If it had a thick atmosphere, internal heat, radioactive elements, or a subsurface ocean, it might even remain geologically active for a time. Could life survive on such a world? Possibly, in very limited ways. Not on a sunlit surface because there may be no nearby sun. Not under blue skies because there may be no day. But deep below, protected by ice or rock, a world might hold heat from within. If liquid water existed underground, and if chemistry provided energy, then simple life might survive without sunlight. On Earth, some life depends on chemical energy rather than direct sunlight. That does not prove life exists on rogue planets, but it shows that sunlight is not the only possible source of biological energy. Still, such a world would be lonely beyond imagination. No sunrise, no seasons from a nearby star, no constellations of local suns, only distant galaxies in the sky, faint and unreachable. If life existed there, it might never know the universe above it. It might live under ice, in darkness warmed by the planet's interior, completely unaware that its world is drifting between galaxies. In that sense, a rogue planet could survive the void by ignoring it. Its life, if any, would not belong to the stars. It would belong to hidden heat. A lonely star could survive there too. Some stars may be thrown out of galaxies by gravitational interactions. A star does not need a galaxy to burn. It carries its own fusion. It can shine in the darkness as long as its fuel lasts. In that sense, a star between galaxies would be one of the few things that brings its own light into the void. But even that would feel strange. A star outside a galaxy would not make the void crowded. It would make the void's emptiness more obvious. Around it, there may be planets, asteroids, or dust. But beyond that small system, there would be enormous blackness. Its light would shine into a region with almost nothing nearby to receive it. It would be a lighthouse in an ocean where the next shore is almost impossibly far away. If planets orbited such a star, they might have a local environment. They might even be warmer than most objects in the void. In a narrow sense, a small island of habitability could exist between galaxies. A star system does not need to be inside a galaxy to be a star system. Gravity can still hold planets. Light can still warm surfaces. Chemistry can still happen. But such islands would be rare compared with the size of the void. They would not change the larger truth. The void can contain survivors, but not comfort. It can contain islands, but not a continent. It can contain a ship, a probe, a rogue planet, a lonely star, maybe even a hidden biosphere. But each one would be isolated inside a vastness that offers almost no support. This means survival there is possible, but not generous. A thing survives by being self-contained. A star survives because it carries fusion. A rogue planet survives because it carries mass, heat, and insulation. A robot survives because it can sleep and endure. A human ship survives because it builds a miniature world inside its walls. Nothing survives because the void helps it. This is the terrifying difference between existing in the void and belonging to the void. A rock can exist there. A planet can drift there. A star can shine there. A machine can cross it. But belonging is something else. To belong to a place, there must be some relationship between the place and the life inside it. Earth supports life through air, water, sunlight, chemistry, gravity, and countless cycles. A galaxy supports complexity by gathering matter into stars and systems. The void does not support in that way. It mostly separates. So if life enters the void, it must bring its own belonging. It must carry its own environment. This is why a generation ship crossing intergalactic space would be one of the most extreme survival ideas imaginable. It would not be enough to build a fast engine. Speed helps, but speed does not make the void useful. The ship would still need to remain a stable habitat for as long as the crossing lasts. It would need to survive not only space, but time. Time may be the greater enemy. A century is already long for machines. 1,000 years is long for institutions. 1,000,000 years is almost beyond civilization as we understand it. Intergalactic distances push survival into these uncomfortable scales. Even if a ship traveled at a significant fraction of light speed, the gap between major galaxies would remain immense. If it traveled much slower, the journey could become so long that the original mission would be ancient myth before arrival. Could a society stay coherent for that long? Could language survive? Could engineering knowledge survive? Could the purpose of the journey survive? Could the ship avoid becoming a closed world that forgets why it is moving? The void turns survival into continuity, not just keeping hearts beating. Keeping civilization understandable to itself. That is why the ship's greatest systems would not only be engines and reactors, they would be schools, archives, laws, rituals, maintenance cultures, and ways of resolving conflict. A ship can have perfect machines and still fail if the society managing them collapses. In the void, social failure is also environmental failure, because there is nowhere else to go. A human ship would need to be mentally and culturally self-sustaining. People would need a reason to keep repairing systems they did not build, for a destination they may never see, across a darkness that gives almost no encouragement. They would need to believe the journey matters, or at least that the lives on board matter enough to continue carefully. Survival would become a shared story, repeated and updated until it becomes part of identity. A robot does not need meaning. A human civilization does. That is one reason humans may be harder to send through intergalactic space than machines. Machines can wait without despair. Humans turn waiting into culture, and culture can heal or break. If the void offers no changing sky, no natural cycles, no visible progress, then the society must create rhythm and meaning from within. Otherwise, the ship becomes not a world, but a prison moving through dark. Could a civilization turn that prison into a home? Maybe. But only if it stops treating the crossing as empty time. If generations are born between galaxies, their lives cannot be considered merely a delay between departure and arrival. They are not tools for the final generation. They are the civilization. Their art, friendships, work, grief, discoveries, and ordinary days matter, even if they never see the destination. Without that belief, a long intergalactic journey becomes morally impossible. Survival requires more than oxygen. It requires a reason not to hate the place where you are alive. That may be the hardest human part of the void. A machine can cross emptiness. A human society must live inside it. The same question applies in a different way to any life hidden on a rogue planet. If simple organisms lived deep under ice, they would not need meaning. They would need energy, chemistry, stability, and protection. For them, survival might be quiet and ancient. No sky, no stars, no awareness of galaxies. Life could continue in darkness without fear, because fear belongs to minds that understand their condition. In that sense, simple life might survive the void more peacefully than intelligence. Intelligence knows too much. A microbe under ice does not care that it is between galaxies. A human looking out a window does. That awareness is both power and burden. It lets humans navigate, build, remember, plan, and ask questions. But it also makes them feel scale. It makes them understand how far help is. It makes them feel the loneliness of a galaxy reduced to a glow. It makes them suffer from knowledge that a simpler organism would never need. So could anything survive in the void? Yes, but survival becomes different depending on what you are. A star survives by burning. A planet survives by drifting. A microbe survives by needing very little. A robot survives by sleeping. A civilization survives by remembering why it should continue. That last one is the most fragile. Because a civilization is not only matter, it is agreement. It is trust. It is memory. It is a shared belief that tomorrow matters. In the void, all of that must be maintained, without help from outside nature. The ship must be an ecosystem, a machine, a school, a government, a home, and a story all at once. If any one of those fails, survival becomes harder. If too many fail, the void does not need to do anything. It simply receives what is left. That is the quiet horror of intergalactic space. It is not actively hostile in the way a storm is hostile. It does not hunt. It does not rage. It simply offers almost nothing and waits for anything unprepared to run out of what it brought. The void asks the same question of everything inside it. What do you carry? Because whatever you carry is almost all you have. That is why intergalactic survival is one of the purest tests of self-sufficiency in the universe. It removes the easy supports, it removes the nearby star, it removes the surrounding galaxy. It removes the possibility of quick rescue. It removes the comfort of a changing sky. What remains is whatever the traveler brought into the dark. For a human ship, that means the cargo is not only physical, it carries air and water, yes, but also language, memory, trust, science, discipline, patience, hope. If the ship loses those invisible supplies, the visible supplies may not be enough. This is where the void becomes more than a place. It becomes a question about what survival really means. If a ship keeps breathing but loses culture, has it survived? If a civilization reaches another galaxy but forgets why the journey mattered, has it survived? If humans remain alive but become cruel, afraid, and empty, did humanity survive, or only the species? The void does not answer these questions. It only makes them harder to avoid. Because between galaxies, survival is stripped down to essentials. Not the essentials people imagine in comfort, but the real essentials: energy, matter, knowledge, cooperation, and meaning. A civilization that lacks any of them becomes weaker with every passing generation. The void is not empty, but it is empty of forgiveness. A mistake may not be corrected quickly. A shortage may not be replaced. A forgotten skill may not be recovered in time. A broken society may not have somewhere else to go. That is why anything that survives there must be unusually complete. A star is complete in one way. A rogue planet is complete in another. A robot probe is complete in another. A generation ship would have to be complete in the most difficult way. Not only technically complete, but socially and culturally complete enough to remain alive across deep time. And if anything could do that, then the void would not be impossible. It would simply be one of the hardest environments in existence. Not because it crushes, not because it burns, but because it gives almost nothing back. This is the lesson hiding inside the question of survival. The void between galaxies is not a dramatic arena full of constant events. It is a region where events are rare, resources are thin, and distance dominates everything. Survival there is possible only for things that carry their own center. A star carries a center of fusion. A planet carries a center of gravity and heat. A probe carries a center of instructions. A ship carries a center of life. Without a center, the void turns everything into drift. And once you understand that, the larger truth becomes unavoidable. The void between galaxies is not some strange exception at the edge of the universe. It is not a rare empty corridor between otherwise crowded regions. It is a sign of what the universe is mostly like on the largest scales. The bright islands are real. The galaxies are real. The stars are real. The planets are real. But the distance between them is not a small detail. It is the dominant reality. And that means the universe is not mostly made of places like Earth, or even places like the Milky Way. It is mostly the space between places. That may be the hardest truth to accept about the universe. From Earth, the universe feels like a collection of things: stars, planets, moons, galaxies, nebulae, black holes, bright objects with names, shapes, colors, and stories. These are the things we point telescopes at. These are the things we turn into images. These are the things that make space feel alive. But if you zoom out far enough, the picture changes. The universe is not mainly made of bright objects sitting close together. It is mainly made of distance. The bright things are real, but they are rare concentrations. Stars are gathered into galaxies. Galaxies are gathered into groups and clusters. Clusters connect through enormous filaments of matter, forming something like a cosmic web. But between those structures are vast regions where matter is thin, light is faint, and almost nothing exists in a form that feels like a place. This is why the void between galaxies matters so much. It is not a strange, empty crack in an otherwise crowded universe. It is one of the clearest examples of what the universe is like on the largest scales: mostly open, mostly dark, mostly distant. The galaxies are the islands we notice because they shine. The void is the ocean we underestimate because it does not. Human attention naturally goes toward light. If a photograph shows a spiral galaxy, we look at the spiral arms. We look at the bright core. We look at the blue stars and the dark dust lanes. If a telescope image shows a cluster of galaxies, we count the glowing shapes. We focus on the places where matter has gathered enough to become visible. But the blackness around those objects is not just background. It is part of the universe too, and often it is most of the image. A galaxy can contain hundreds of billions of stars and still be surrounded by a darkness far larger than itself. A cluster can contain thousands of galaxies and still be separated from other clusters by enormous regions of thinner space. Even the grand cosmic web, with its filaments and nodes, is defined as much by the spaces between its strands as by the strands themselves. The universe is a structure of bright islands and dark separation, and the separation dominates. This becomes easier to understand if you think about scale. Inside a city at night, lights can make the world feel full. Streets glow, windows shine, cars move, signs flash. But if you rise high enough above the ground, the city becomes a cluster of brightness surrounded by darker land. Rise even higher, and cities become points. The dark regions between them become larger and more obvious. Something similar happens with the universe, but on a scale so much greater that ordinary comparison begins to fail. From inside the Milky Way, stars seem scattered everywhere. From outside it, the galaxy becomes one glowing structure. From far beyond galaxies, even those structures become points and smudges in a web of darkness. The farther out the view becomes, the more obvious the void becomes, not because the bright things stop mattering, but because the dark between them becomes impossible to ignore. This is one reason the phrase outer space can be misleading. It makes space sound like a place outside Earth, as if once we leave the atmosphere, we have entered one general environment. But space has layers of emptiness. The distance between Earth and the Moon is empty compared with a city. The distance between planets is empty compared with the Earth-Moon system. The distance between stars is emptier still, and the distance between galaxies takes that emptiness to another level. The universe is not one kind of empty. It is emptiness nested inside greater emptiness. A room can be empty. A desert can be empty. An ocean can be empty. But the void between galaxies belongs to a deeper category. It is not simply a place where no one is standing. It is a region where the things that make places possible are spread so thinly that the human idea of environment almost disappears. That is why saying the universe is mostly void is not just a scientific statement. It is an emotional one. It means that the familiar parts of reality are exceptions. Planets are exceptions. Warm surfaces are exceptions. Oceans are exceptions. Forests are exceptions. Cities are exceptions. Even stars are part of a clustered structure, not something evenly spread through all space. Most locations in the universe are not near a world. Most are not near a sun. Most are not near a galaxy's rich star field. Most are not places where anything human could step, breathe, build, or wait without a machine. This does not make the universe meaningless, but it does make it less comforting, because we often imagine the cosmos through its highlights. We jump from Earth to Mars, from Saturn to the Orion Nebula, from the Milky Way to Andromeda, from galaxies to black holes, as if the universe is a chain of wonders placed close enough for a story. But the real universe is not arranged for storytelling. It is arranged by gravity, expansion, matter, energy, time, and scale. And scale is not kind to human intuition. A documentary can move from one galaxy to another in seconds. Light may take millions of years. A camera can show a cluster of galaxies in one frame. The real distances inside that frame may be so large that every glow is separated by a gulf beyond ordinary imagination. A map can make the cosmic web look like a pattern you could hold in the mind. But living inside one of its empty regions would feel nothing like looking at a map. That difference matters. Maps compress terror. Images compress distance. Words like void compress almost nothing into a small sound. The reality is larger than the language. When we say the universe is mostly empty, it can sound simple, almost boring. Empty space, nothing there. But the real terror is that this emptiness is not a small absence between important things. It is the main stage on which the important things appear. The void is not a pause in the universe. It is one of its dominant conditions. Galaxies are not normal because they fill the universe. They are normal only because we live inside one. That is a strange reversal. From our position, a galaxy feels like the basic environment. Stars above us, planets around one star, a galactic band across the sky. But on the larger scales, a galaxy is a concentration, a rare bright knot in the cosmic web, a place where matter gathered enough to shine. The void is what happens when matter did not gather that way, or gathered too weakly, or spread too thinly. It is not a failure of the universe. It is part of how the universe is built. This makes the void between galaxies less like an empty gap and more like a fundamental feature. The universe expands. Gravity pulls matter into structures. Dark regions open where matter is less concentrated. Galaxies form where matter gathers. Voids remain where matter is sparse. The bright and dark parts are related. You cannot understand one without the other. A galaxy looks beautiful partly because of the darkness around it. A star matters because it shines inside space that does not. A planet feels precious because most places are not planets. Earth feels extraordinary because the universe does not casually provide Earth-like conditions everywhere. The void teaches this by contrast. It shows what is missing almost everywhere. Nearby warmth, nearby matter, nearby shelter, nearby energy, nearby life. The more empty the universe appears, the more unusual every habitable place becomes. This is why the void between galaxies changes the meaning of Earth. Earth is not only a planet. It is a concentration of conditions so rare from a human point of view that it almost feels impossible. A rocky surface, liquid water, a thick atmosphere, a stable star nearby, chemistry complex enough for life, a biosphere, memory, conscious beings capable of asking what lies beyond the sky. All of that exists on a tiny world inside one galaxy. And that galaxy is only one island in a universe mostly made of separation. The contrast is almost unbearable. It is easy to say that Earth is small. People say it often. A pale blue dot, a speck, a tiny planet around an ordinary star. But the void gives that smallness a different meaning. Earth is not just small compared with the universe. It is also intensely concentrated compared with the universe. Everything humans need is gathered there in a way the void almost never provides. Air, water, warmth, soil, pressure, food, light, gravity, and life are all close together. The void is the opposite. It spreads reality apart. It separates light from warmth. It separates matter from usefulness. It separates existence from availability. That may be the true terror of the universe being mostly void. It is not only that space is big, it is that most of that bigness does not function as home. It does not hold the things we need in one place. It does not automatically turn matter into worlds. It does not make life easy. It does not make rescue nearby. The universe is capable of life, but not centered on life. The universe is capable of beauty, but not arranged for comfort. The universe is capable of places, but mostly it is between places. This idea can make the bright parts feel even more miraculous. A star forming inside a cloud of gas becomes more than a light. It becomes a local victory over emptiness. A planet gathering around a young star becomes more than rock. it becomes matter, becoming a place. A biosphere becomes more than biology. It becomes the universe briefly organizing itself into breath, color, hunger, movement, memory, and awareness. The void does not erase meaning, it intensifies it. Because if most of the universe is not a place, then every place matters more. Every star system is an island of possibility. Every planet is a rare concentration. Every habitable environment is a fragile exception. Every living world is almost unbelievably precious. This is why the void between galaxies can feel both terrifying and clarifying. It terrifies because it shows how little of the universe is immediately useful to us. It clarifies because it shows why the useful places matter so much. It strips away the fantasy that space is naturally generous and replaces it with something colder, but maybe more honest. The universe gives us islands, not guarantees, and the islands are far apart. This also changes how we think about exploration. Humans often imagine exploration as moving from one place to another, from known land to unknown land. But the largest scale exploration of the universe would not be like crossing a continent. It would be like crossing from island to island across an ocean so large that the ocean itself becomes the main reality. Most of the journey would not be arrival, it would be crossing. Most of the view would not be destination, it would be distance. Most of the challenge would not be finding a wonder, it would be surviving long enough for a wonder to matter. That is why the void between galaxies is not just a physical region. It is a lesson about what exploration really means when the scale becomes cosmic. To explore the universe is not only to visit bright objects, it is to confront the darkness between them. It is to accept that most paths are long, most help is far, and most of space does not care whether a traveler arrives. This does not make exploration pointless, it makes it more serious, because every journey into deep space is really a journey away from support, away from the places where matter is useful, away from the environments that shaped the body and mind. The farther we travel, the more we must bring our own world with us. The void between galaxies is the extreme version of that truth. It is what space becomes when almost every natural support has been removed. Still, the void is not dead in a cosmic sense. It has history, it has structure, it has matter at its thinnest. It has ancient light crossing through it. It has gravitational relationships connecting galaxies across enormous scales. It is part of how the universe became what it is. Without empty regions, the cosmic web would have no shape. Without distance, galaxies would not stand apart as galaxies. The void is not meaningless. It is meaningful in a way that is not human-centered. That may be the hardest kind of meaning to accept. A mountain can feel meaningful because we can climb it, see it, name it, live near it, or fear it. An ocean can feel meaningful because it has waves, storms, fish, shores, and routes. A galaxy can feel meaningful because it shines. But a void can be meaningful without being friendly, without being visible, without being close, without offering anything to the body. It matters to the universe, even if it does not comfort us. That distinction is important because it prevents us from making the void smaller than it is. The void is not nothing, and it is not bad. It is not evil. It is not a mistake. It is simply a vast expression of a universe whose scale is beyond human need. The terror comes from realizing that reality can be meaningful without being supportive. The void does not exist for us. It simply exists. And we happen to be beings who need closeness. This is where the perspective becomes almost philosophical, but it begins with physics. Matter gathered in some places and not in others. Gravity amplified differences. Galaxies formed. Voids opened. Stars burned. Planets formed around some stars. Life appeared on at least one known world. Then that life looked outward and realized that most of the cosmos is not like the small world that produced it. That realization is humbling. It means we are not only small in size, we are local in every way. Local to a planet, local to a star, local to a galaxy, local to a region where matter has gathered enough to make our kind of existence possible. The void shows what lies beyond that locality. Not monsters, not cinematic danger, not dramatic walls of darkness. Just the larger condition. Space so thin, so wide, and so quiet that even galaxies become rare landmarks. This can make the universe feel lonely, but it can also make home feel more important. When people say the universe is vast, they often mean that it contains many things. And it does. But the deeper truth may be that it contains many things separated by far more nothing than we are comfortable imagining. The richness of the universe is real, but it is scattered. The beauty is real, but it is distant. The possibilities are real, but they are not conveniently placed. The void is the cost of cosmic scale. This cost appears everywhere. The distance between stars limits travel. The distance between galaxies limits rescue and communication. The distance between habitable worlds, if they exist, may limit how often life can meet life. Even if the universe is full of wonders, distance can make each wonder isolated from the next. That isolation may shape the fate of civilizations. A civilization inside a galaxy may spread from star to star, if it becomes advanced enough. But between galaxies, the scale changes so drastically that expansion becomes something else. It is not merely a longer trip. It is a crossing into a region where the universe stops providing frequent stepping stones. A civilization trying to cross would have to become extremely patient, self-sufficient, and stable. The void may be one reason cosmic civilizations, if they exist, could remain separated. Not because the universe is empty of life necessarily, but because the spaces between possible homes are so enormous. Distance can isolate even a crowded universe. This idea is unsettling. We often ask whether we are alone. But the void suggests another possibility. Maybe life, intelligence, or civilizations could exist in more than one place, yet still be separated by distances so large that loneliness remains the normal experience. The universe could contain many islands, and still, every island could feel alone. A universe does not need to be empty to be lonely. It only needs to be large enough. That is one of the most terrifying realities of the void between galaxies. It takes the question of loneliness and makes it physical. Loneliness is not only an emotion. On cosmic scales, it can be geometry. It can be distance. It can be expansion. It can be the fact that light itself takes too long to turn existence into relationship. The galaxies shine, but they do not easily touch. And if they do not easily touch, then the civilizations inside them may not either. This is why the universe being mostly void is not just a background fact. It changes the meaning of connection. It means that contact is difficult not only because technology is limited, but because the universe's layout is vast. It means that presence is rare. It means that nearness is precious. It means that the places where matter, energy, and life gather are islands against a much larger silence. The void gives cosmic geography its emotional weight. Galaxies become more than collections of stars. They become refuges. Clusters become more than structures. They become archipelagos. The spaces between them become more than gaps. They become the great separations that define the universe's loneliness. And yet, none of this makes the universe less beautiful. It changes the kind of beauty. A crowded star field is beautiful because it feels rich. A nebula is beautiful because it glows with color and creation. A galaxy is beautiful because it gathers billions of suns into one shape. But the void is beautiful in a harsher way. It is beautiful because it reveals proportion. It shows that the bright things are not endless. It frames them. It makes them fragile. It turns every galaxy into a lantern floating in a darkness too large to comprehend. Beauty and terror become the same view. That is why the void between galaxies may stay in the mind longer than a planet or a nebula. A planet gives you a surface, a nebula gives you color, a galaxy gives you structure, but the void gives you scale. It does not fill the imagination with objects. It empties the imagination until only the largest truths remain. Most of the universe is not where the stars are. Most of it is where the stars are not. And if you were there, between the galaxies, you would not need anyone to explain that sentence. You would see it. Or more accurately, you would see almost nothing. And that almost nothing would tell you the truth. The universe is not terrifying only because of black holes, exploding stars, or violent collisions. It is terrifying because its ordinary state, across most of its volume, is so far from anything human beings can live inside. The terrifying part is not always the extreme event. Sometimes it is the quiet baseline. The baseline is darkness, distance, thin matter, faint light, galaxies far away, places separated from places. That is why the void between galaxies feels like a warning, hidden in plain sight. It reminds us that our local environment is not typical. We are not floating in a universe that is naturally warm, bright, and full of nearby destinations. We are living inside a rare concentration of matter, around a star, on a planet, inside a galaxy, protected by layers of structure we barely notice, because we were born inside them. The void reveals those layers by removing them. Remove the planet, and you need a ship. Remove the star, and you need your own energy. Remove the galaxy, and you lose the starry sky. Remove nearby matter, and you lose almost every backup. What remains is the universe in its most stripped-down form, not empty, but almost empty of home. That is the truth behind the phrase, "The universe is mostly void." It does not mean the universe is boring. It means the universe is dominated by spaces where complexity is rare, where matter is thin, and where the things we love about existence are not naturally gathered together. And this makes the next question unavoidable. If the universe is mostly void, then what does that say about us? What does it mean to live on one small planet, near one star, inside one galaxy, when the larger cosmos is mostly distance? Maybe the void is not only a place between galaxies. Maybe it is a mirror that shows us how rare closeness is, how fragile home is, and how strange it is that anything like us exists at all. That may be what the void between galaxies really says about our place in space. It does not only tell us that the universe is large, we already know that in a simple way. We know the numbers are enormous. We know stars are far away. We know galaxies contain billions of suns. We know light can travel for millions or billions of years before reaching us. But knowing the numbers is not the same as feeling what they mean. The void makes the numbers emotional. It shows that our place in the universe is not just small. It is local, extremely local. Everything familiar to human life exists inside a tiny chain of closeness. We live on a planet because matter gathered into a world. That planet orbits a star because gravity gathered gas into the sun. The sun belongs to a galaxy because gravity gathered stars into the Milky Way. The Milky Way belongs to a larger cosmic neighborhood, surrounded by other galaxies, groups, clusters, and vast regions of separation. At every level, our existence depends on matter being close enough. Close enough to form atoms, close enough to form stars, close enough to form planets, close enough for chemistry, close enough for oceans, close enough for memory. The void shows what happens when closeness is removed. Matter may still exist, but it is too thin. Light may still exist, but it is too far. Galaxies may still exist, but they are not near enough to feel like surroundings. The universe remains real, but it stops feeling like a home. That is why the void changes how we think about Earth. Earth is often described as small, and it is small. But the void reminds us that small does not mean ordinary. Earth is not ordinary from the perspective of a human body. It is a rare concentration of useful conditions. It has air dense enough to breathe, water gathered in oceans, clouds, rivers, ice, and cells, a star close enough to warm the surface, but not so close that it destroys it, a magnetic field, a solid ground, a living biosphere, a sky that changes, a horizon that holds the world together. These things are easy to forget because we are surrounded by them. We were born inside support. We confuse support with normal. The void removes that confusion. Between galaxies, almost none of those supports exist nearby. There is no natural blue sky, no nearby sunlight, no air, no water gathered into oceans, no soil, no weather, no living surface, no sound moving through atmosphere, no natural rhythm of day and night, nothing that says to the body, "You belong here." So when we look at the void, we are really looking at what the universe is like when home has been removed. And that makes home feel different, not smaller, more precious. A single room with air becomes extraordinary when compared with intergalactic space. A plant leaf becomes extraordinary. A glass of water becomes extraordinary. A human voice becomes extraordinary. Warmth, pressure, gravity, color, scent, and touch are not guaranteed features of reality. They are local miracles, created by matter arranged in a very specific way. The void teaches that the human world is not weak because it is small. It is precious because it is concentrated. That is a very different feeling. When people first see images of Earth from space, they often talk about fragility. The planet looks alone, blue, thinly wrapped in atmosphere, floating in blackness. But even that blackness is still near-Earth blackness. The sun is nearby. The moon is nearby. The solar system is around us. The stars of the Milky Way surround us. The planet is isolated, but still, inside layers of structure, the void between galaxies removes almost all of those layers. It asks a colder question. What does a world mean when most of the universe is not a world? The answer may be that a world is not just a physical object. It is a place where relationships become dense. Earth is a world because many things meet there. Light and water, rock and air, chemistry and time, life and memory. A galaxy is also a kind of world on a larger scale because stars and systems share a gravitational home, but the void is mostly the absence of dense relationship. Things exist there, but they are not gathered enough to create the kind of nearness humans need. This means our place in space is not only a coordinate, it is a relationship. We belong to Earth because Earth holds us. Earth belongs to the Sun because the Sun warms it and holds it in orbit. The Sun belongs to the Milky Way because the galaxy holds it inside a vast structure. Our existence is nested inside layers of belonging. The void is what lies beyond those layers. That is why it feels so unsettling. It reveals that belonging is not automatic. Most of the universe does not hold us. Most of the universe does not give us an environment. Most of the universe does not gather what we need close enough to use. We are not at the center of reality. We are inside one small pocket where reality happens to be arranged in a way that allows us to ask questions. This does not make life meaningless. It makes life more astonishing. If the universe were comfortably filled with Earth-like places, then Earth might feel less surprising. But the more we understand the emptiness between the bright islands, the more every living world begins to feel improbable and important. The void does not erase the value of life. It sharpens it, because life is not spread evenly through the darkness. At least as far as we know, life is local. Maybe life exists elsewhere, maybe many worlds have living oceans, forests, microbes, or civilizations. But even if they do, the void reminds us that they are separated. Life may be rare, or it may be common in the cosmic sense. But common in the cosmic sense can still mean impossibly distant in the human sense. That is one of the most important ideas. The universe could contain many living worlds and still be lonely, because distance can isolate abundance. A galaxy could contain many civilizations, and they might still never meet. Galaxies could contain life, and the void between them could make contact almost impossible. The universe does not need to be empty of life for loneliness to be real. It only needs to be large enough that life cannot easily become presence. The void turns the question, "Are we alone?" into something deeper. Not only does life exist elsewhere, but can life reach life? Can intelligence answer intelligence? Can one island of meaning ever touch another before time, distance, and silence turn every signal into history? That is the emotional weight of the void. It shows that existence and connection are not the same thing. Something can exist and still be too far away to matter directly. A civilization can shine with knowledge inside another galaxy and still be unreachable. A world can have oceans under another sun and still be forever outside our experience. The light may arrive, but the relationship may not. This makes our local relationships more important. The people near us are not just nearby by accident. In a universe dominated by distance, nearness is one of the rarest gifts. A voice you can hear without a million-year delay is extraordinary. A face you can see in real time is extraordinary. A planet that holds billions of lives in one shared atmosphere is extraordinary. The void makes closeness sacred, not because it is mystical, because it is rare. On cosmic scales, almost everything is separated from almost everything else. Stars are separated by light years, galaxies by millions of light years, clusters by even larger spaces. And yet, on Earth, matter and life are gathered so tightly that one breath can be shared with a forest, one ocean can connect continents, one atmosphere can wrap an entire living world. That is not a small detail. It is the foundation of everything human. The void also changes the meaning of intelligence. Human intelligence often imagines itself as powerful because it can understand the universe. And in one sense, that is true. A small brain on a small planet can calculate the age of stars, map galaxies, detect background radiation, and imagine the space between cosmic islands. That is extraordinary. But the void humbles intelligence too. Understanding distance does not remove distance. Naming the void does not make it smaller. Mapping galaxies does not bring them close. A mind can cross the universe in thought, while the body remains trapped by physics. This creates a strange tension. We are mentally larger than our location, but physically bound to it. We can imagine intergalactic space. We can describe it. We can create simulations, images, and stories. We can understand that the Milky Way is one galaxy among many. But our bodies still need water, pressure, warmth, and air. Our bodies remain local. The void reminds us that knowledge is powerful, but not magic. It lets us see farther than we can go. That may be one of the defining features of being human in the cosmos. We are beings who can understand places we may never reach. We can feel awe for galaxies that will never be destinations. We can fear a void we may never enter. We can love a universe that is not built for us. There is something beautiful in that, and something sad. Because to understand the void is to understand the limits of our own scale. We are not naturally cosmic beings. We are planetary beings with cosmic awareness. We come from soil, water, weather, sunlight, and biology. But our minds reach outward into regions where none of those things exist in a useful form. The void is where that mismatch becomes clear. It shows the difference between what the mind can hold and what the body can survive. A human mind can look into intergalactic space and ask questions. A human body can only go there inside an artificial world. That is why every deep space dream is also a story of carrying Earth with us. If humans travel far enough, they cannot leave Earth completely behind. They must bring Earth-like conditions in miniature: breathable air, water cycles, food systems, temperature control, social structure, memory, and meaning. The farther we travel from natural support, the more we must become caretakers of artificial support. In that sense, the void does not only threaten us, it teaches us what we are. We are not separate from our environment. We are made possible by it. Every human life is an agreement between biology and surroundings. Remove the surroundings, and the life must build replacements. This is why a spacesuit, a station, or a starship is never just technology. It is a tiny manufactured extension of Earth. It is a bubble of planetary conditions carried into places that have none. The void between galaxies would be the ultimate test of that idea. Can a species born under one sky build a moving world strong enough to cross a region with almost no sky at all? Maybe one day, intelligence somewhere could do that. Maybe not. But even thinking about it changes how we see ourselves. It shows that civilization is not only cities, machines, and information. It is also the ability to maintain conditions for life. It is the ability to keep air breathable, water clean, knowledge alive, and people connected. In the void, those are not background tasks. They are the whole foundation. This is why the void can make ordinary life feel cosmic. A farmer growing food on Earth is part of a chain of survival. A teacher passing on knowledge is part of a chain of survival. A doctor, an engineer, a parent, a scientist, an artist, a person repairing a machine or comforting someone afraid. All of these acts become clearer when seen against the void. They are ways of resisting separation, decay, and silence. The void shows that life continues only when conditions are maintained. On Earth, nature does much of that maintenance for us. In deep space, we would have to do it ourselves. This also changes how we think about home. Home is often imagined emotionally. The place we love, the place we remember, the place we belong. But the void reveals that home is also practical. Home is the place that keeps you alive without you thinking about every breath. It is the place where support surrounds you so completely that you forget support is happening. Earth is home, partly because it hides the machinery of survival inside nature. The air is just there. The warmth is just there. The water cycle continues. Plants grow. Gravity holds. Day returns. The void removes all of that and asks what home means when nothing is just there. If humans crossed intergalactic space, home would have to become deliberate. Air would be managed. Water would be recycled. Light would be generated. Food would be cultivated under control. Community would be maintained by choice. The ship would be home only because people keep making it home. That may be the deeper lesson. Home is not only where you come from. Home is where life is held together. The void makes this visible by contrast. It shows that our place in space is not important because it is large, central, or dominant. Earth is none of those things. It is important because it is where life is held together for us. The Milky Way is important because it is the larger structure that contains our star. The local universe is important because it is the neighborhood of galaxies that gives our cosmic position context. But the void shows that context can disappear. Travel far enough, and the Milky Way becomes a glow. Travel farther, and it becomes one island among many. Travel farther still, and even islands become points in a dark web. The human story becomes smaller and smaller in space, but maybe not smaller in meaning. Meaning does not scale the way size does. A galaxy is larger than a child, but it does not make the child less real. A void is larger than a civilization, but it does not make the civilization meaningless. Size and value are not the same. The void is terrifying, partly because it tempts us to confuse them. It shows us a universe so large that we feel almost erased. But being small is not the same as being worthless. A song is small. A memory is small. A living cell is small. A human life is small. But small things can carry meaning in a universe that does not measure meaning. That may be one of the few comforting truths the void allows. We do not matter because the universe notices us. We matter because we can notice each other. We can answer each other. We can care locally, even inside a cosmos that is not arranged around care. This does not make the void less real. It makes our response to it more important. If the universe is mostly distance, then connection becomes an act of resistance. Every conversation, every community, every living ecosystem, every world where matter gathers into life is a rare answer to separation. The void spreads things apart. Life pulls things into relationship. That contrast may be the deepest difference between a dead universe and a living one. Life is matter that has learned closeness. A cell is closeness. A body is closeness. A society is closeness. A planet's biosphere is closeness on a global scale. The void is the opposite principle. Separation, distance, thinning, silence. And somehow, inside this universe of separation, closeness happened here. That is why the void feels like a mirror. It reflects our fragility, but it also reflects our improbability. It shows how unlikely it feels that atoms, after billions of years, could gather into beings who ask what the darkness means. It shows that consciousness is not floating everywhere in obvious form. It appears, at least to us, in small pockets of order against a vast background of emptiness. This can make human existence feel lonely, but also astonishing. The void does not tell us that we are important to the universe. It tells us that importance is not something the universe hands out. It is something living beings create through relationship, memory, and care. That may sound philosophical, but it matters even for science. Science itself is a relationship between minds and reality. The universe does not explain itself in human language. We observe, measure, test, and interpret. We build instruments to extend our senses. We create models to understand places we cannot touch. Even our understanding of the void is an act of connection across distance. A photon travels for millions of years. A detector receives it. A human mind asks what it means. For a moment, a distant galaxy becomes part of a local thought. That is one of the quiet miracles of astronomy. We cannot cross the void easily, but light crosses it. Information crosses it. The universe sends traces of itself, and small beings on a small planet learn to read them. In that sense, the void is not completely silent. It speaks in faint light, ancient radiation, gravitational effects, and patterns too large to see directly. But it speaks slowly, and it never speaks only to us. We are listeners, not the audience for which the universe was made. That humility may be the healthiest response to the void. Not despair, not arrogance, not pretending we are central, not pretending we are nothing. Something in between. A recognition that we are small, local, fragile, temporary, and yet capable of understanding enough to feel wonder. The void does not require us to give up meaning. It requires us to stop expecting meaning to come from size. Maybe that is what our place in space really is. Not the center, not the edge, not the final purpose of everything, but a rare point of awareness inside a universe mostly made of distance. A place where the cosmos briefly became able to look back at itself. That thought can be terrifying, but also beautiful, because the same void that makes us feel small also makes awareness feel extraordinary. Against billions of light years of darkness, the existence of even one mind asking questions becomes strange and luminous. Not physically luminous, but meaningful. A tiny light of understanding inside a universe of stars too far apart to comfort each other. This is why the void between galaxies should not only make us afraid, it should make us careful. Careful with Earth. Careful with life. Careful with the conditions that allow thought, memory, and connection to exist. If the universe is mostly not home, then home deserves attention. If closeness is rare, then what is close should not be treated as ordinary. The void does not make Earth less important. It makes Earth harder to take for granted. It shows that the blue sky above us is not the default state of reality. It shows that a breathable atmosphere is not ordinary everywhere. It shows that a nearby star, a stable orbit, liquid water, and a living world are not guaranteed. It shows that the simple act of standing outside under open air is already an exception inside a universe mostly hostile through absence. And maybe that is the final emotional turn before we face the full truth of intergalactic space. The void is terrifying because it is empty of what we need, but it is also revealing because it shows what we have: a planet, a star, a galaxy, a sky, a place where matter became life, and life became aware of the darkness around it. That awareness does not make us masters of the universe. It makes us witnesses. And perhaps, if we are careful, caretakers. Because once you understand the void between galaxies, the universe no longer looks like an endless collection of destinations. It looks like a dark ocean with rare islands of possibility. Some islands are galaxies, some are stars, some are planets, and at least one is a living world where beings can look into the dark and understand that most of reality is not like home. That may be the deepest thing the void says about our place in space. We are not normal because the universe is full of places like us. We are extraordinary because the universe is mostly not. And that brings us to the final truth. The void between galaxies is not terrifying because something is hiding there. It is terrifying because almost nothing is. It is the universe stripped of comfort, stripped of nearness, stripped of the bright illusions created by living inside a galaxy. And when you see it clearly, the darkness stops being background. It becomes the main story. That is the final terrifying truth about the void between galaxies. Not that it is full of danger. Not that something enormous is waiting there. Not that the darkness hides a secret wall, a monster, or a force trying to destroy anything that enters. The terrifying truth is quieter than that. The void is terrifying because almost nothing is there. And that almost nothing is not a small part of the universe. It is not a rare exception. It is not only the gap between two beautiful places. On the largest scales, emptiness is not the background behind the story. It is where most of the story takes place. The stars are real, the galaxies are real, the planets are real, but they are islands, and the void is the ocean. From Earth, this is hard to feel. We live inside one of the islands. We live near a star, on a planet, inside a galaxy filled with other stars. Our sky is shaped by local light. Our sense of reality is shaped by warmth, air, water, ground, weather, and life. We begin from a place where matter has gathered into meaning. So when we imagine space, we often imagine it through the bright parts. A glowing planet, a spiral galaxy, a colorful nebula, a distant star, a black hole bending light. But the void between galaxies forces a different picture. It asks us to imagine what remains after the bright parts are far away. What remains after the starry sky is gone? What remains after the Milky Way is no longer around us, but only behind us? What remains when every possible destination is too far away to feel like help? What remains is distance, darkness, thin matter, old light, and silence that is not an event but a condition. That is why intergalactic space feels different from almost every other frightening place in the universe. A black hole is terrifying because gravity becomes extreme. A supernova is terrifying because a star destroys itself. A neutron star is terrifying because matter becomes unimaginably dense. A hostile planet is terrifying because the surface could crush, burn, freeze, or poison you. But the void between galaxies is terrifying because it almost does nothing. It does not need to destroy you actively. It simply gives you nothing useful. No nearby sunlight, no easy resources, no rescue, no natural shelter, no horizon, no world, no close sky full of stars, no place where a human body belongs. This is the kind of danger humans are least prepared to feel. We understand threats that move. We understand storms, fires, predators, impacts, explosions, collapsing structures. Those dangers have shape. They arrive. They change the scene. They demand a response. The void is not like that. The void waits. It lets time pass. It lets distance do the work. If your ship is strong, it continues. If your ship weakens, the void does not change. If your society holds together, it continues. If your society breaks, the void does not respond. If you send a signal, it travels. If no one answers for 1,000,000 years, the void does not notice. This indifference is what makes the void so haunting. It is not hostile in the way a living enemy is hostile. It is not angry. It is not even aware. It is simply so large, so thin, and so empty of nearby support that human need becomes almost irrelevant. The void does not care whether you survive, and that may be more frightening than something that hates you, because hatred at least implies attention. The void offers none. A spacecraft crossing it would be a tiny exception moving through a vast rule. Inside the ship, there might be light, voices, air, crops, machines, memories, laws, music, sleep, fear, and hope. Outside the ship, almost everything would be far away. The ship would be a little pocket of closeness in a region defined by separation. That contrast is the heart of the entire journey. Inside, presence. Outside, distance. Inside, meaning. Outside, scale. Inside, life. Outside, almost nothing that life can use. This is why the void between galaxies is not only a place, it is a test of perspective. It forces us to ask what really matters when the universe around us gives no easy answer. If a galaxy contains billions of stars but is too far away to reach, does it comfort you? If a distant world may exist but can never be visited, does it help you survive? If light arrives from across millions of years, is that connection or only evidence? The void makes these questions unavoidable. It shows the difference between seeing and reaching, between existing and being near, between light and warmth, between knowledge and home. A galaxy can be visible and still unreachable. A star can shine and still be useless. A planet can exist and still be too far away to matter. A universe can be full of things and still feel lonely. That may be the most unsettling idea of all. The universe does not have to be empty to feel empty. It only has to be large enough. A distant galaxy can contain countless suns, but if it is millions of light years away, it cannot warm you. It cannot repair your ship. It cannot answer your voice in time. It cannot become part of your life except as light. It exists, but it does not belong to your immediate world. And for humans, the immediate world matters. We are not built to live in abstractions. We are built to live near things, near air, near water, near warmth, near other people, near ground, near cycles, near the sources of life. The void between galaxies removes almost all of that and reveals how local our existence really is. Our bodies do not live in the universe as a whole. They live inside one tiny set of conditions. Our minds can travel farther, but our biology remains tied to closeness. We can understand the void, but we cannot belong to it without building a world around ourselves. That is why a starship in intergalactic space would be more than technology. It would be a moving act of resistance, a refusal to let distance become the end of meaning. Every breath inside the ship would say that life can continue even where life is not naturally supported. Every plant grown under artificial light would say that green things can exist in a region without a nearby sun. Every child born on board would say that the future can appear even in a place where the universe offers almost nothing back. But that does not make the void gentle. It only makes survival more remarkable. The ship would have to carry what the void does not provide: energy, air, water, food, knowledge, trust, repair, patience, culture. If it loses those things, the void does not replace them. If it forgets how to maintain them, the void does not teach. If it becomes careless, the void does not forgive. That is why the final truth is not only scientific, it is human. The void shows that survival is not just about staying alive. It is about maintaining the conditions that make life possible. On Earth, many of those conditions are hidden by nature. We breathe without thinking about the atmosphere. We drink water from a planet that cycles it. We eat food grown by sunlight. We stand on ground held by gravity. We live inside support so complete that it can become invisible. In the void, support must become visible. Every system matters. Every repair matters. Every lesson matters. Every act of cooperation matters. The ship survives only because people keep choosing to make survival real. This is why the void can make Earth feel different. It does not make Earth seem less important, because Earth is small. It makes Earth seem more important because Earth is concentrated. So many things we need are gathered here, in one place, close enough for life to happen. Air and water, light and chemistry, land and ocean, plants and animals, memory and language. A living world wrapped around a star. Compared with the void, Earth is not just a planet. It is an answer to separation, an answer to cold, an answer to distance, an answer to the question of whether matter can become a place where life knows itself. And the Milky Way is part of that answer too. It is a great island of stars, a structure where matter is dense enough to make suns common, where planets can form, where chemistry can become complicated, where life at least once became aware. From inside it, the universe seems full. From outside it, the galaxy becomes fragile, isolated, and beautiful. A lantern in a dark sea. That image may be the best way to understand intergalactic space. The galaxies are lanterns. The void is the dark sea around them. A lantern can be bright, but it does not remove the sea. A galaxy can contain billions of stars, but it does not erase the distances between galaxies. The universe can be full of light, but the light is not evenly spread. It gathers into islands, and the islands are far apart. That is the terrifying reality. Not darkness everywhere, but light too far away. Not nothing at all, but almost nothing nearby. Not a dead universe, but a universe where most places are not places for us. This is what makes the void between galaxies so powerful as an idea. It is not only about astronomy. It is about the difference between the universe as it exists and the universe as humans wish it felt. We wish the cosmos were full of reachable places. We wish distance were only a challenge, not a wall across time. We wish every light in the sky were a possible neighbor. But the void says no. Most lights are not neighbors. Most distances are not roads. Most of space is not waiting to become home. And yet, that truth does not have to end in despair. Because the same void that makes us feel small also reveals how rare and valuable closeness is. If the universe is mostly separation, then every connection matters more. A planet that holds life matters more. A community matters more. A voice that answers in the same room matters more. A world where water, air, sunlight, and biology meet matters more. The void does not destroy meaning. It removes the illusion that meaning comes from size. Meaning does not have to be large. It has to be real. A human life is tiny compared with a galaxy, but it can still contain love, fear, memory, hope, pain, curiosity, and care. A room inside a ship is tiny compared with intergalactic space, but it can still be the only place nearby where anything living exists. A small planet can be almost nothing compared with the universe, and still be everything to the beings who live there. Scale is not value. The void teaches that. It teaches it brutally, by showing us scale without comfort. And maybe that is why the void is so hard to stop thinking about. It does not frighten us with action. It frightens us with proportion. It shows us the real ratio between the places where life might gather and the spaces where almost nothing supports it. It shows us that the universe is not crowded with homes. It is mostly the distance between possible homes. That realization changes the night sky. When you look up from Earth, the stars may still seem scattered and familiar, but behind that familiar view is a deeper truth. The stars are part of our galaxy. The galaxy is one island. Beyond it are other islands. Between them are distances so vast that even light becomes ancient before it arrives. The sky is not a ceiling full of little lights. It is a view from inside one island, looking out into an ocean. And the ocean is dark. That darkness is not evil. It is not waiting. It is not hiding some single final terror. It is simply the natural state of most cosmic volume. Thin matter, weak light, long delays, enormous gaps. A universe that can create wonders but does not place them close together for our convenience. This is why the title matters. The terrifying reality of the void between galaxies is not that something terrible happens there, it is that almost nothing happens there. For ages, for distances beyond instinct, for stretches of space where the human mind searches for landmarks and finds almost none. The void is terrifying because it is patient emptiness, a silence so large that galaxies become rare islands inside it. A distance so wide that even seeing something does not make it reachable. A darkness so ordinary that it may be one of the main conditions of the cosmos. And if you were there, between the galaxies, you would understand it in a way no image from Earth could fully explain. You would look back and see the Milky Way as a glow. You would look ahead and see another distant island. You would look around and see almost nothing close. Then you would understand that most of the universe is not the glowing places we love to photograph. Most of it is the crossing, the waiting, the black between the lights. And in that blackness, anything warm, living, or meaningful becomes almost unimaginably precious. That may be the final emotional truth of the void. It makes the universe feel less like a home, but it makes home feel like a miracle. It makes the stars feel farther away, but it makes every nearby light more important. It makes humanity feel small, but it makes every human connection feel rare. The void does not tell us that we are nothing. It tells us that we are not guaranteed. There is a difference. Nothing means without value. Not guaranteed means fragile, temporary, local, worth protecting. That is the truth the void gives back, if it gives anything at all. We live in a universe where most places are not for us. But somehow, here, in one galaxy, around one star, on one small world, something became able to notice that. Something became able to look into the dark and understand that the dark is vast. Something became able to feel afraid of the void and grateful for home at the same time. That is a strange kind of beauty. Maybe the void between galaxies is terrifying because it shows us what reality looks like without comfort. But maybe it is also beautiful because, by contrast, it shows us what comfort is. A nearby voice, a shared world, a sky above a planet, a star close enough to warm us, a place where life can happen without carrying everything inside metal walls. The void has almost none of that, and that is why it matters, because sometimes the universe teaches us through what it lacks. The lack of warmth teaches the value of warmth. The lack of nearness teaches the value of closeness. The lack of home teaches the value of home. The void between galaxies is the universe almost stripped bare. No familiar sky, no nearby star, no natural shelter, no easy road, no quick answer, only distance, darkness, faint light, and the rare glowing islands where matter gathered enough to shine. So if we ask what the void really is, the answer is not only empty space, it is the universe reminding us that places are rare. It is the universe showing us that light is not everywhere. It is the universe revealing that the darkness between galaxies is not just background. It is one of the deepest realities there is. And perhaps that is why the void feels so terrifying. Not because it is unnatural, but because it may be more natural than the places we call home. The galaxies are the exceptions. The stars are the exceptions. The planets are the exceptions. Life is the rarest exception we know. And we are living inside that exception right now. So the next time you look at the night sky, remember that the stars above you are not proof that the universe is full everywhere. They are proof that you live inside one of the bright islands. Beyond that island, beyond the Milky Way, beyond the last familiar stars, the universe opens into distances so large that even galaxies become lonely. That is the terrifying reality of the void between galaxies. The dark is not hiding something. The dark is the thing. Thank you for watching this journey through the void between galaxies. If you enjoyed this calm exploration of deep space, subscribe to the channel for more space documentaries like this. Leave a like if you want more slow journeys through the mysteries of the cosmos. And write in the comments what impossible question you want to explore next. Tonight, you are watching the Just About Space channel, talking about the terrifying reality of the void between galaxies. Sleep well and keep looking up. Good night.